All right, so are you ready to dive into AI agents?
Always ready to dive into something new, especially when it comes to AI.
Yeah, this should be a fun one. We asked you to send in some sources, and you guys sent in masteringaiagents.pdf. So we're going to take a deep dive into that today and try to unpack some of these concepts.
Sounds good.
Let's get into it. So the first thing is, what even is an AI agent? Because that sounds kind of sci-fi, right?
Yeah, it kind of does. I mean, they're becoming more and more common these days, but it still has that futuristic ring to it. An AI agent is basically a system that uses artificial intelligence, and specifically those large language models, to make decisions and then actually take actions without constantly needing a human to tell it what to do.
So instead of like a simple chatbot that is just spitting out canned responses, an AI agent can actually reason and plan, like strategize, almost like a human would.
Exactly. And the level of autonomy, like how much it can actually do on its own, really depends on the type of agents. And that's where mastering AI agents gets interesting. They lay out this whole spectrum of AI agents, from really basic ones to some that are honestly kind of mind-blowing.
Yeah, that's what I'm really excited to dig into. Because when people talk about AI agents, it's like, what are we even talking about here? Are we talking about like a digital assistant on our phone or something much more powerful?
It can be both. It really depends. So let's start with the most basic type, which the ebook calls fixed automation agents. These are basically like your rule-based systems that are great for routine tasks, those predictable things that don't really change much.
So if you need something to, I don't know, process invoices or schedule appointments, those really repetitive things, a fixed automation agent might be a good fit. But if you need to handle something more complex, something with more variables, you're going to need a more sophisticated agent.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where those LLM enhanced agents come in. They bring in the power of large language models, which basically allows them to understand context. So they're still operating within rules, but they can handle a bit more variation, adapt to subtle changes in the input.
So they're kind of like those advanced chatbots that can actually hold a conversation and understand what you're asking.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. But they're still kind of limited in terms of what actions they can take.
Okay, so what's the next step up in AI agent evolution? What's the next rung on that ladder?
The next level is what the ebook calls React agents. And this is where things start to get really interesting because React stands for reason and act. And that's exactly what these agents can do. They can actually analyze a situation, think through the options, and then actually take steps to achieve a specific goal.
So they're not just following the script, they're actually figuring things out on their own.
Exactly. They can use their knowledge and like their reasoning abilities to solve problems, even if they've never seen that exact problem before.
Can you give me a real-world example? Like, what would a React agent actually do?
Sure, imagine you've got a React agent managing your social media. It can look at who your audience is, figure out what's trending, and then create and schedule posts that are going to work for your goals.
Wow. So it's not just about automating those individual tasks, it's actually thinking strategically, right?
That's the key difference. It's not just doing, it's thinking and planning.
Okay, so those React agents sound super powerful. But the ebook goes even further, right? There are even more advanced types.
Oh, yeah, there are. Now, when you give those React agents access to even more information, like tons of external data, that's when things get really wild. The ebook calls those React plus RAG agents. RAG stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation, which basically means the agent can pull info from massive databases.
So it's like giving them access to the internet, but they can sift through that info way faster than any human could.
Exactly. It's like a research team on hyperspeed. And that means these agents can check their own work, bring in up-to-the-minute data, even learn stuff as they go.
That's pretty mind-blowing. So they're not just limited to what they already know. They can learn new things constantly.
Yeah, pretty much. And as you can imagine, the more these agents can do, the more they need to be able to actually do things, like in the real world, not just in the digital space. So that's where those tool-enhanced agents come in. These are the agents that can actually integrate with other software, with APIs. So they can do things like, write code, analyze data, even control physical devices.
Okay, so we're talking about agents that can actually have a real-world impact. That's where things start to get really exciting, but also, I imagine, a bit scary, right?
Yeah, for sure. Because with all that power comes the need for accountability. How do we make sure these agents are doing what they're supposed to be doing? And that's where self-reflecting agents come in. These are the agents that can actually look at their own decisions and figure out if they need to improve. They can even explain their reasoning to us humans, which is huge for trust.
Yeah, it's like if the AI can explain why it made a certain decision, we're more likely to trust it, right? Especially if it's a decision that affects us in some way.
Exactly. And that becomes even more important as these agents become more personalized. And that brings us to memory-enhanced agents. These are agents that can actually remember their past interactions with you so they can learn your preferences, adapt to your specific needs.
Now that's where it starts to feel like we're going beyond simple automations, right? It's like having an AI colleague who not only knows how to do the job, but also knows you and how you like things done.
That's the idea. And it's getting closer and closer to reality every way. But it gets even crazier. There are even more advanced types on the horizon, and those are the ones that really make you think about, the future of AI and what it all means.
Okay, hit me with it. What's the next level?
We're talking about environment controllers, which are agents that can actually manipulate their surroundings. Think about that. And then there are self-learning agents, which can actually evolve and get better over time without a human explicitly programming them.
Okay, now we're definitely in sci-fi territory. Environment controllers, that sounds like, I don't know, a super advanced smart home, but on a much grander scale.
Exactly. Think about a system that manages energy use for a whole city, or optimizes traffic flow, or even responds to environmental changes in real time. That's the kind of stuff these environment controllers could do.
And the self-learning agents, that's where it starts to feel a little, I don't know, unnerving. Like, what happens when AI can not only learn, but it can learn how to learn better?
Yeah, that's a big question, and one that honestly keeps a lot of researchers up at night. The potential is huge, but there are definitely some risks there too if we're not careful.
So it's not just about building these incredibly smart agents, it's about understanding how to control them, how to make sure they're not doing things we don't want them to do.
Exactly. And that brings us to another crucial piece of this whole AI agent puzzle, choosing the right framework. Because building an AI agent, it's not as simple as just snapping your fingers. You need the right tools, and that's where these frameworks come in.
Right, Mastering AI Agents talks about how the framework you choose can make or break your whole project. So what are the key things we should be thinking about here?
Well, the ebook highlights three popular ones: LangGraph, Autogen, and Crew AI. And each of them has its own pros and cons, so the best choice really depends on what you're trying to do.
Okay, let's break those down one by one. Starting with LangGraph, what makes that one stand out?
LangGraph is all about visuals. They use a graph-based interface so you can actually see the different parts of your agent and how they connect to each other. It's a really helpful way to visualize complex processes.
So if you're someone who likes to see the big picture, how everything fits together, LangGraph might be a good option.
Yeah, I'd say so. Now, Autogen is a different beast. That one is all about conversational workflows. So it's really good for building agents that need to interact with humans in a natural way, kind of like a really advanced chatbot.
Sounds like Autogen would be great for things like customer service bots or even personal assistants, anything where that back and forth conversation is really important.
Exactly. And then you've got Crew AI, which is designed for building multi-agent systems. So that's when you have a whole team of AI agents working together on a common goal.
So if you're tackling a really complex problem that needs a bunch of specialized AI brains working together, Crew AI might be the way to go.
That's the idea. It's like building your own little AI army, each one with its own special skills. But no matter which framework you choose, building a good AI agent, it's about way more than just the tools. You need to really understand the task, the data, and how you're going to measure whether the agent is actually successful.
Which brings us to evaluation, right? Because Mastering AI Agents was really clear about how important it is to evaluate these agents to make sure they're actually doing what they're supposed to be doing and doing it well. What are some of the things we should be looking at when we're evaluating an AI agent?
Well, first off, you got to know what success looks like. What are your goals for this agent? Is it speed, accuracy, cost effectiveness, or maybe a combo of all those things? Once you know what you're aiming for, you can actually start measuring how well the agent is doing against those goals.
So it's not just about building an agent that technically works. It's about building one that actually delivers value, that solves the problem you're trying to solve.
Absolutely. And there are all sorts of tools and techniques you can use to evaluate an agent's performance. The ebook mentions things like LLM judges, which are basically AI systems that can assess the quality of an agent's responses. They also talk about metrics like context adherence, how fast the agent works, and how much it costs to run.
So it's like having a panel of AI judges scoring your agents. But instead of judging them on style or creativity, they're looking at things like accuracy, efficiency, and whether the agent is actually staying on task.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. And ultimately, that's what we're trying to figure out, right? Is the agent doing what it's supposed to be doing? Is it doing it well? And is it doing it in a way that aligns with our goals and values?
And speaking of goals and values, that brings us to another really important aspect of AI agent development, which is the need for ethical considerations, guardrails. We're going to dive deeper into those topics in the next part of our deep dive. But before we get there, I think it would be helpful to look at some real-world examples, see how these AI agents are actually playing out in different industries.
Sounds good to me. Let's get into those case studies and see what we can learn from the successes and maybe more importantly, the failures of others.
Okay, so we've talked about what AI agents are, those different types, the frameworks people use to build them. But I want to see these things in action. How are people actually using them in the real world.
That's what I like about mastering AI agents. They give you those real-world examples, the good, the bad, the ugly. They've got 5 case studies that show both the wins and the, well, let's just say the learning experiences.
I'm all about learning from other people's mistakes. So let's start with that healthcare network that was trying to streamline their insurance claims process with an AI agent. What happened there?
So their idea was to use the agent to, analyze all those medical codes, verify coverage, check for compliance stuff, all those tedious tasks that human claims processors have to deal with.
Makes sense. Less paperwork, faster payments, patients are happy, providers are happy, everybody wins. So what went wrong?
Well, it turns out AI isn't a magic bullet, and in this case, it actually created a whole new set of problems. The agent was making mistakes, especially with those more complicated claims, like the ones with experimental procedures or when you've got multiple insurance policies involved.
So instead of saving time, the human claims processors were spending more time fixing the AI's errors.
Yep, it was a compliance nightmare. Payments were getting delayed, patients were getting frustrated, and the compliance team was freaking out. They basically created more work for themselves.
Yikes. Okay, so lesson number 1. AI can actually make things worse if you're not careful. So what did they do to, fix the situation?
They went back to the drawing board and focused on 2 things: making sure the agent was actually completing those tasks correctly and reducing errors. Like, they implemented rules for escalating those complex cases to a human expert.
So recognizing that AI has its limits, and sometimes you just need a human brain to handle those really tricky situations.
Exactly. And they also realized they were giving the AI way too much information, like they were feeding it entire patient histories when it really only needed a few specific details for each claim.
So they were basically overloading the AI with unnecessary information, which probably slowed it down and increased the risk of errors.
Totally. They had to streamline the data flow and make sure the agent was only getting the info it actually needed.
So once they made those changes, did the AI agent actually live up to its promise?
It did. Once they focused on reducing errors, improving accuracy, and being more efficient with the data, they started seeing real benefits. Claims were processed faster, compliance improved, and everyone was much happier.
All right, so lesson number 2. Clearly define what you want the agent to do, give it the right information, and don't be afraid to bring humans back into the loop when needed. What about case study number 2, that accounting firm that brought in an AI agent to help with their tax document processing?
Ah, yes. The accountants, they're always looking for ways to automate those tedious tasks, right? Free up more time for that strategic thinking.
Totally. So did it work? Was the AI agent a dream come true for the accountants?
Not quite. They ran into some major snags. The agent was great at handling those simple expense receipts, but when it came to those complex corporate audits with all those multi-layered documents, all those intricate financial transactions, the AI just couldn't keep up.
So the human auditors were stuck doing all the heavy lifting, right?
Pretty much. They had this huge backlog of partially completed audits, turnaround times were longer than ever, and their computing costs were through the roof.
Wow. So the AI was actually costing them money, not saving it. What went wrong there?
They kind of made a classic mistake. They thought the AI could handle anything they threw at it. But it turns out AI still struggles with those tasks that require a lot of judgment, a deep understanding of accounting principles. You can't just automate everything.
So what did they do to salvage the situation?
They had to adjust their expectations and start thinking about how to use the AI more strategically. They broke down those complex audits into smaller, more manageable chunks that the AI could handle. And they also made sure the AI had a better understanding of the context. So instead of giving it entire tax histories, they started focusing on specific time periods and transactions.
So it's about setting the AI up for success, giving it the right information and the right tools to do its job, and maybe admitting that some tasks are just better left to humans, at least for now.
Exactly. And once they made those adjustments, the AI agent actually started to provide some value. It wasn't replacing the human auditors, but it was helping them speed up certain parts of the process.
Okay, so lesson number 3, don't try to automate everything. Start with those well-defined tasks that the AI can do reliably, and then you can gradually expand its scope as you gain confidence. What's next? Case study number 3.
Yeah, let's jump into that one. This time we're heading to Wall Street to a boutique investment firm that was trying to, impress their clients with this fancy new AI-powered stock analysis service.
Ooh, the world of high finance where time is money and data is king. I'm guessing this one didn't go exactly as planned.
You could say that they had this vision of using the AI to generate these hyper-personalized investment recommendations, But their clients weren't impressed. In fact, they started to question the value of the service because the AI was either giving them too much information, like drowning them in data, or not enough, like just these vague recommendations with no real substance.
So either information overload or not enough information to actually make a decision. Not a great situation for a financial advisor.
No, and the portfolio managers were getting frustrated too. They were being bombarded with all these redundant analysis requests. It was just creating more work for everyone.
So what was the issue? Did they just choose the wrong AI for the job?
It wasn't so much about the AI itself, but about how they were using it. They failed to consider the different needs of their clients and their internal teams. They were giving everyone the same level of detail, regardless of their role or their investment goals.
So it's like giving the same financial advice to a seasoned investor with decades of experience and someone who's just starting out. Totally different needs.
Exactly. They needed to customize the output. Give the analysts the detailed reports with all the supporting data, but give those business managers the concise summaries with clear actions.
So it's all about understanding your audience and tailoring the message to their specific needs. Sounds like a pretty simple fix, but I guess it's easy to overlook those details when you're caught up in all the hype of new technology.
Oh yeah, for sure. And they made another mistake too. They weren't taking advantage of the AI's ability to learn and adapt. They were making it reanalyze every document from scratch for each new request instead of using what it had already learned.
So they were basically reinventing the wheel every single time, wasting time and money.
Exactly. They needed to leverage the AI's memory, its ability to learn from its past analyses.
Okay, so lesson number 4. Think about the user experience, both for your clients and your internal teams. And make sure you're actually using the AI's learning capabilities, not just its processing power. What about case study number 4?
All right, this one takes us into the world of software development. We've got a software company trying to make their engineers more productive by giving them an AI coding assistant.
Oh, now that's something I'm really interested in. The idea of AI helping us write better code faster. I mean, that's the dream, right?
It is, but their initial rollout was a bit of a nightmare. Instead of helping the engineers, this AI assistant was actually slowing them down and causing more frustration.
So more bugs, more headaches, not exactly what they were hoping for.
Nope, it was pretty bad, especially when they were trying to meet tight deadlines. The main problem was that the AI was making suggestions that were either too complicated, too simple, or just completely irrelevant to the code they were working on.
So instead of helping them write better code, it was actually making the code worse.
Yeah, it was like having a spell checker that suggests the wrong word every time.
So what did they do to, get this AI assistant back on track?
They realized that the AI wasn't really understanding the context of the code. It was just spitting out random suggestions without really paying attention to what the engineers were trying to do.
So it was like having a conversation with someone who wasn't really listening. Not very helpful.
Exactly. So they focused on improving the AI's ability to understand the context. They also had to beef up the infrastructure because the AI kept crashing or timing out when it had to deal with those really big, complex code files.
So they had to make sure the AI could actually handle the demands of real-world software development.
Yep. And once they made those improvements, the AI coding assistant actually started to become a useful tool. It wasn't a magic solution, but it definitely helped the engineers write code faster and with fewer errors.
Okay, so lesson number 5. Context is everything, and make sure your AI can handle the workload. What about the last case study, number 5?
All right, last but not least, we've got a software company that's trying to improve their lead scoring with an AI agent. So basically using the AI to figure out which potential customers are most likely to buy their product.
Makes sense. Identify those high-value leads so the sales team can focus their efforts on the right people. Lots of potential there for AI to make a real impact.
Absolutely. But their first attempt was a bit of a flop. The AI was misclassifying leads, which meant the sales team was chasing a lot of dead ends and missing out on real opportunities.
So instead of boosting sales, the AI was actually costing them money. Ouch. What was the problem?
Well, one of the biggest issues was speed, or rather, the lack of it. The AI was taking forever to analyze each lead, which created huge bottlenecks. The sales team was basically stuck waiting for the AI to do its thing.
Not exactly a recipe for success.
Not at all. So they dug into the code and realized that AI was making a ton of unnecessary database queries. It was basically reanalyzing similar companies over and over again instead of using what it had already learned.
Sounds inefficient.
It was. They had to teach the AI to be smarter about how it used data to leverage its past analyses. They also realized the AI was doing all those database queries one at a time. It was like having a single checkout line at the grocery store.
So they had to create those express lanes, make the AI work in parallel.
Exactly. And once they made those changes, the AI lead scoring system actually started working. The sales team was getting accurate, timely information, and they were able to close more deals.
Okay, so lesson number 6. Speed matters when it comes to AI. And make sure you're actually using its learning capabilities, not just its raw processing power. So we've seen some pretty interesting examples here, some successes, some failures. What are some of the key takeaways we should be thinking about when it comes to AI agent development?
Well, I think the biggest take-home is that AI is not a magic solution. It's a powerful tool, but you have to use it strategically. You need to carefully consider the task, the data, the user experience. You can't just throw AI at a problem and expect it to magically fix everything.
Right, it's not a set it and forget it kind of thing. You need to have a plan, you need to evaluate, you need to adjust, you need to be constantly thinking about how to use AI effectively and ethically.
Exactly. And that brings us to the last section of Mastering AI Agents, where they really dig into those common reasons why these AI projects fail. And there's a lot to unpack there, so let's take a closer look.
All right, so we're back, and we've been exploring all these different aspects of AI agents, from the nitty-gritty technical details to those real-world case studies that show both the incredible potential and the, let's just say, the learning opportunities.
Yeah, and in part 2, we ended on that thought-provoking question about transparency in AI, right? The idea that an AI agent should not only be able to do the job, but also explain how it arrived at its decision.
Exactly, and I think that's going to become even more crucial as these AI agents get smarter and start making decisions that have, real-world consequences for people's lives.
It really gets to the core of whether we can trust these AI systems, right? Right now, a lot of AI, especially those complex models, they operate like a black box. We see what goes in, we see what comes out, but that actual decision-making process, it's hidden.
And that can be kind of unsettling, especially when you're dealing with things like, I don't know, medical diagnoses or financial investments or even legal judgments. These are high-stakes decisions, and if we don't understand how the AI arrived at its conclusion, it's hard to fully trust it.
Exactly. If something goes wrong, or even if we just want to understand the AI's logic, that lack of transparency can be a major roadblock.
It's like, imagine going to a doctor and they give you a diagnosis, but they don't explain any of the tests they ran or the reasoning behind their decision. You might follow their advice, but you're going to have that nagging doubt in the back of your mind, right?
Right, but now imagine if those AI agents could actually walk us through their thought process step by step in a way that made sense to us humans. We could spot errors, we could correct for biases, and ultimately build systems that are more reliable and trustworthy.
It's almost like having an audit trail for the AI's thinking, so we can see exactly how it got from point A to point B.
Exactly, and I think that kind of transparency could also help us build a better working relationship between humans and AI. Instead of seeing these agents as these mysterious black boxes, we could start to see them more as partners, collaborators.
Because if we understand how the AI is thinking, we're more likely to trust its judgments, right?
Right, and that trust is essential for any kind of successful collaboration.
Okay, so transparency sounds great in theory, but how do we actually achieve it? I mean, these AI models, especially those massive language models, are incredibly complex. It's not like we can just crack them open and look inside.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge, but researchers are making some real progress in the field of AI interpretability, finding ways to, make those black boxes a little less opaque.
So we're starting to get a better understanding of how these algorithms actually work, which is a huge step towards building more transparent systems.
Exactly. And one promising approach is to design AI models that can actually generate explanations along with their outputs.
So instead of just giving us a recommendation like, buy this stock, the AI would also tell us why it's making that recommendation.
Right. It might say something like, based on my analysis of the company's recent earnings reports, current market trends, and social media sentiment, I predict this stock will outperform its competitors in the coming months.
Okay, so it's not just giving us the answer, it's giving us the reasoning behind the answer, which is super helpful, especially if we want to, double check the AI's work.
Exactly, because even the smartest AI systems can still be influenced by the data they're trained on, and that can lead to bias. Transparency helps us identify and correct for those biases.
So transparency is not just about building trust, it's also about making sure these AI systems are being used in a way that's fair and ethical.
Absolutely. And another interesting approach to transparency is to design AI models that are more interactive.
So instead of just passively receiving a report, we could actually, have a conversation with the AI.
Exactly. Ask it questions, probe its assumptions, challenge its conclusions.
It's like having a back-and-forth dialogue with the AI instead of just receiving a one-way message.
Right. And that kind of dialogue can lead to a much deeper understanding and better collaboration.
But even if we can make these AI systems more transparent, there's still the question of how to communicate that information to humans in a way that's actually understandable.
Yeah, because just dumping a bunch of technical jargon on someone isn't going to be very helpful. We need to find ways to translate those AI insights into something that makes sense to people.
Exactly. We need clear language, maybe some helpful visuals,
Exactly. That's where the fields of data visualization and human-computer interaction become really important. We need to think carefully about how we design those interfaces that allow people to understand and interact with these complex AI systems.
Because if we want these systems to truly benefit everyone, they need to be accessible and understandable to everyone, not just the engineers and data scientists who build them.
Right. And that brings us back to that core idea of responsible AI development. Building transparent AI systems isn't just a technical challenge, it's an ethical one, too.
We need to make sure these AI agents are being developed and used in a way that benefits everyone, not just a select few. And transparency is a huge part of that.
It allows us to hold these systems accountable, understand their limitations, and ultimately use them to create a more just and equitable world.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground here today. We've explored the different types of AI agents, those frameworks you can use to build them, the crucial importance of evaluation, all the ways these projects can go wrong, and, of course, the amazing possibilities that are still to come.
And we've talked about those real-world examples, how people are actually using these agents today, from healthcare to finance to software development.
And most importantly, I think we've highlighted that need for transparency, accountability, and a commitment to responsible development. These are the principles that need to guide us as we enter this new era of AI agents.
The future of AI isn't just about building smarter machines. It's about using those machines to build a smarter, more equitable, and more sustainable future for everyone. And that's something worth striving for.
Absolutely. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive into the world of AI agents. Thanks for joining us on this journey. We'll see you next time for another exploration of cutting-edge technology and its impact on our lives.